Microdosing is when you derive the maximum benefit from taking the minimum effective dose. This is how you minimize unwanted effects. People microdose daily to feel and perform better. Some use it to enhance their creativity, to sleep better, to help with pain, to have more focus in the moment, to recover from workouts quicker, and to manage anxiety. Today's podcast is sponsored by Microdose Gummies and Lumi Labs. Microdose Gummies deliver perfect, entry-level doses of THC that help you feel just the right amount of good. I used some of the Microdose Gummies last weekend, and I enjoyed it a lot. I generally like to be productive, but I was more interested in de-stressing, so I floated in the pool. It was a relaxing and amazing experience. I highly recommend it. The gummies are organic, infused with real fruit, vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and they are enjoyable. I'm really pleased with this company and their products. 10 out of 10. Microdose is available nationwide. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com and use the code BEYOND to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Links can be found in the show description, but again, that's microdose.com, code BEYOND.
This podcast contains adult themes and graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
A commercial-free version of this podcast is available on Patreon for $1 per month. Patreon.com/Beyond Contempt podcast. I'm Renee, and this is Beyond Contempt True Crime. You're listening to episode 62, Aundria Bowman. Kathy Turkanian had a chaotic childhood. Her mother, Shirley, had 6 kids with 3 men. Kathy's stepdad was in the Navy. The family moved around a lot, and her stepfather was often gone on deployment. Shirley had a lot on her hands with so many children, one of which had special medical needs, and as a result, she didn't keep as close of an eye on her kids. At age 10, Kathy was molested by the husband of one of her mother's friends. At age 12, another teenager raped her. Kathy decided she needed to leave her family in Virginia, and she hitched to Memphis, Tennessee at age 14. She was deciding where to go next, and randomly bought a ticket to New Orleans, Louisiana. This was where Kathy met 19-year-old Randy Badger, and they started dating. Kathy and Randy went to South Carolina, where they were married. Kathy's parents had to give their signed permission, since she was still a minor. The couple had been married less than a year when Kathy discovered she was pregnant. 17-year-old Kathy Turkanian gave birth to her daughter, Alexis Miranda Badger, on June 23, 1974, in New Orleans, Louisiana. Unfortunately, Randy was more interested in partying and chasing other women than he was in being a husband and father. Kathy made a tough decision and left Randy in New Orleans. She begrudgingly moved back in with her mother in Virginia. Shirley couldn't offer Kathy much help with raising her infant, as she was in the middle of a medical nightmare and had been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Kathy's mother sought guidance from an organization called Catholic Charities, and planned to put 5-month-old Alexis Badger up for adoption. Shirley thought this would be the best thing for Alexis. Kathy left home again and moved on with her life. Unbeknownst to Kathy, her daughter Alexis ended up in Virginia's Department of Social Services and spent time in the foster care system. At 21 months, a Michigan family from Allegan County adopted Alexis. Allegan County was south of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Her adoptive parents, Dennis and Brenda Bowman, renamed her Aundria. Aundria's life was also chaotic, and she never really settled in with the Bowmans. When Aundria was in middle school, she had been bleeding from her wrists when she got onto the school bus. The rumor mill was racing. Some kids thought she tried to kill herself. Other kids suspected her parents locked her out of the house, and she cut herself trying to get back in. There were also rumors that both Dennis and Brenda Bowman were abusing Aundria, But it was the 1980s, and people were in the cultural habit of minding their own business. In 1988, Aundria was 14 years old and was in her first year of high school. One day she told the school staff that she didn't want to go home because her father, Dennis Bowman, was molesting her. This prompted a social worker to visit the Bowmans' home, and an interview was conducted. Brenda and Dennis said Aundria's claims of sexual assault were not true. They told the social worker that Aundria was acting up because she was recently told she was adopted. On March 11th, 1989, Dennis called the police and reported that his daughter, Aundria, was missing. He said after work he returned home and there was $100 missing from his dresser drawer. A few of Aundria's belongings were missing as well. Dennis said Aundria was a troubled girl. She had run away once before to a friend's house, and she perpetually fought with her mother. Dennis promised he would call Aundria's friends to see if they knew where she was, but nothing ever turned up. Local agencies labeled Aundria Bowman as an endangered runaway, which meant she was a missing child under the age of 18 who disappeared by her own volition, and her parents didn't know where she went. Shortly after Aundria's disappearance, the Bowmans moved into a mobile home in a rural section of Hamilton, Michigan. Brenda eventually took over for her husband and kept in contact with the police. Brenda also corrected the amount of money that was missing from their dresser drawer from $100 to $150. Police considered this a large enough amount of money to issue an arrest warrant for Aundria Bowman for larceny, with Dennis Bowman listed as the victim. Brenda Bowman called the police many times in the months after Aundria went missing and claimed people had seen her daughter in the area. Brenda said that she was seen at the 7-Eleven, then seen hanging out with a group of young men, and someone had spotted her at the grocery store with a pregnant belly and dyed hair. Police could confirm none of these sightings. Some folks in the community figured that Aundria was sick of putting up with the Bowmans and probably left. A few more years went by, and there were no credible sightings of Aundria Bowman. Her disappearance garnered national attention when she was featured in a music video. Soul Asylum was a band formed in the 1980s in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they hit their pinnacle in 1993 when they won a Grammy for the Best Rock Song, called Runaway Train. They blasted the video on MTV and VH1 and showed images and names of missing children. There were several versions of the video, and the version that played in Michigan showed Aundria Bowman's photo. People who were involved in the making of Runaway Train said that the video resulted in some of the missing children being found, but Aundria Bowman was not among them. Kathy Turkanian tried reaching out to her daughter, but was unable to contact her. Kathy learned her daughter went missing in 1989 from her adoptive home in Michigan. Police found a body in Racine County, Wisconsin, and they needed Kathy's DNA in 2013 to see if this was her daughter. The DNA did not match, and the body found in Racine County would eventually be identified as Peggy Johnson, who was featured back in episode 54. As much as Kathy was happy that this wasn't her daughter, she did some digging into what might have happened. She eventually connected with a retired detective who was familiar with her daughter's case, and he pointed her towards Dennis Bowman. This detective also felt that police majorly screwed up this case. Kathy filed a FOIA request for Dennis Bowman's records, and he had a significant history of violence against women. Kathy instinctively felt that she found Aundria's killer. On May 23, 1980, a 19-year-old woman was riding her bike in Ottawa County, just north of Holland, Michigan. A man on a motorcycle pulled in front of her and forced her to stop pedaling. The man ordered the woman to get off her bike and walk into the woods. She remained on her bicycle, so the man pulled a gun and fired a shot that whizzed past the woman. She refused to obey his commands, so he fired a second shot near her feet. If she didn't comply, he would shoot her next. As the situation escalated, a car drove by and caught the man's attention. When he momentarily turned his head to look at the vehicle, the woman pedaled as fast as she could. The man did not chase her, and she flagged down a person driving a pickup truck. She tossed her bike in the truck's bed and jumped into the vehicle. After she went home, her parents called the police, and she provided them with a description of the assailant. He was a white male with a blue helmet and tinted glasses. His motorcycle had one of those black cases mounted on the back. Police found their suspect before the day was over, and the young woman confirmed that he was her assailant. His name, of course, was Dennis Bowman. His case stretched out for over a year. At one of the initial hearings, Bowman did not attend court. His attorney explained that he was in the military, and he was on his mandatory 2-week summer assignment. They charged Bowman with assault with intent to murder, but prosecutors offered him a deal, and he eventually pled down to a count of assault with intent to commit criminal sexual conduct. In court, Bowman admitted his intentions. "I told her to go into the woods, which was next to the road, with the intent of having forced sexual relations with her." In 1981, they sentenced Dennis Bowman to 5 to 10 years in prison. He was required to attend counseling. The judge believed he was a danger to women. Bowman tried to appeal this decision, but they denied it. The judge said the psychologist indicated Bowman exemplified the clinical picture of a rapist and concluded he was a danger to women if he was not confined. Aundria was 6 years old at the time of this attempted assault. Brenda Bowman stood by her husband, regardless of his crime. Even though Bowman was determined to be a danger to women, he only did 5 years of prison time and was released in 1986. Kathy Turkanian's FOIA request also revealed a second crime. Dennis Bowman was in trouble with the law again in 1998 in Dorr, Michigan. His former 28-year-old co-worker named Vicky was having an issue with break-ins. She experienced 15 to 20 break-ins over a 2-month period. Windows and doors were broken. The bottom 2 slats on her bedroom blinds were cut. She believed the perpetrator wanted to peep in on her. Vicky had so many break-ins that police installed a silent alarm. One day, that alarm went off, and a Michigan State Trooper responded to the call. He caught Dennis Bowman walking out the back door of Vicky's home. Bowman told the officer that he was staying with Vicky, so the officer let him walk free. When law enforcement contacted Vicky, she told them that Bowman was lying. She was no fan of his, and he certainly wasn't invited into her home. Vicky said they nicknamed Bowman Hack and Scratch because that's all he did at work. She thought he was creepy and disgusting. Police confronted Bowman, and he offered them a news story. He said that he had to use the bathroom, and that's why he had been there. Bowman said he was familiar with Vicky's house because he had previously taken his daughter Vanessa there to sell Girl Scout cookies. Police didn't buy this story either, so Dennis Bowman gave them permission to search his property. They found a black duffel bag in Bowman's outbuilding. There was women's lingerie inside of the bag, some of which belonged to the victim. There was also a black sweatshirt, a mask, and a short-barreled shotgun. Dennis Bowman pleaded guilty to 1 count of breaking and entering. Before they sentenced him, his lawyer presented the judge with a few letters on his behalf. They were from his boss, the principal of his daughter's elementary school, a member of his church, and a counselor of his sex offender treatment program. There was a letter from Brenda Bowman, who was supporting and defending her husband. And there was a letter from Dennis Bowman himself, which stated, "Sometimes we don't realize a problem until it confronts us face to face." Bowman said he was happily married for 28 years. He had 2 daughters, one 25 and the other 11, and he felt that being a parent was one of the most important and sobering things a person can undertake. Bowman failed to mention that his 25-year-old daughter had disappeared in 1989. Dennis Bowman was sentenced to 1 year in prison, 5 years of probation, and was ordered to pay Vicky for the damages sustained to her home. Productivity. We all want to be efficient and do more with our time. I struggle with this in the mornings as I don't enjoy getting up, and I'm usually foggy when I start work. But I want to introduce you to a drink that helps with procrastination and grogginess, called Magic Mind. Magic Mind is a green shot that you take in the morning, which you can take alongside your coffee, or not. I work hard on my day job, and I create content for this podcast in the evenings. It takes a lot of focus and energy to get everything done. I found that Magic Mind is easy to use, it tastes great, and it's helped my focus. There are a lot of top-notch ingredients in this drink, including lion's mane and cordyceps mushrooms, which help with clarity and focus. I would really encourage you to try it out, especially if you're having trouble getting it together in the morning. Check them out at magicmind.co/contempt. You can use my discount code CONTEMPT20 to get 40% off your first subscription or 20% off your first one-time purchase. My 40% off code only lasts for 10 days, so jump on it. That's magicmind.co/contempt. Discount code CONTEMPT20. As Kathy Turkanian continued her research of Dennis Bowman, she discovered there were other allegations against him, but no charges had been filed. In September 1989, he allegedly sexually assaulted a 6-year-old girl near Holland, Michigan. This was where he worked during that time period. A Find Aundria page had been created on Facebook, and the former 6-year-old victim was now an adult who stumbled onto that page. She contacted the page administrators to tell them the story. In 1989, she was walking to a friend's house when a man pulled over. He promised to show her his puppies and assured her that her mother said it was okay. The man pulled her into the truck, drove a little ways, and pulled off the road into a rural area of Hamilton. He dragged the girl into the bushes, where he ripped off her sweater and tied it around her mouth. The man removed her clothes and tied her hands with rope. The man unzipped his pants, but stopped when a barking dog startled him. It rattled him enough that he ran away and left the girl there. The 6-year-old girl walked back to the main road without her clothes and sought the help of strangers driving by. Police interviewed the girl, and they created a composite sketch of the assailant and his vehicle. Law enforcement never found the man before the statute of limitations of this crime was exceeded. This woman was always upset that the sexual predator was never found, but she was certain that it was Dennis Bowman. There were many other incidents in that area and around that time frame that were very similar. Kathy Turkanian knew Bowman was a serial predator, but lacked hard evidence that could take him down. But that didn't stop Kathy from working on her own investigation of Dennis Bowman. She had traveled to Michigan several times. Kathy hired a private investigator. She even attended a Missing in Michigan conference event where she got into a verbal altercation with Brenda Bowman and her daughter Vanessa. Kathy sat outside the Bowman's home in her car, casing the house. She was adept at using Google satellite images and spotted a concrete slab on the Bowman's property. Kathy felt strongly that her daughter might be buried underneath it. Kathy received a call in November 2019 that the Allegan County Sheriff's Office took Dennis Bowman into custody, but it was not related to her daughter. Bowman was being arrested for the murder of 25-year-old Kathleen Doyle in Norfolk, Virginia, which occurred on September 11, 1980. He committed this murder around the time he was standing trial for attempting to assault the 19-year-old bicyclist. The victim had ironically stated, "I was just concerned that the person had tried to assault me be stopped, so no one else could be harmed." Bowman was out on bail and skipped out on his court hearing. His attorney gave the court the excuse that his client was attending a 2-week summer military drill assignment, but really, Bowman had been busy assaulting and murdering Kathleen Doyle. Kathleen was found without her clothes and was gagged, raped, strangled with a cord, and stabbed in her chest. Police believe the perpetrator was a stranger to the victim. Kathleen had grown up in a Navy family. Her father was a retired naval officer living in San Diego, and her husband, of only 9 months, was a Navy pilot. At the time of her murder, her husband had been deployed to the Indian Ocean on the USS Eisenhower. Kathleen lived by herself, minus her cat, Ike, and the couple did not have children. She wanted to be an author, and was in the season of her life where she wrote a lot of personal journals that chronicled her excitement and fears about the future. Kathleen was discovered inside her bedroom when friends stopped over and found her body. This murder struck fear into Navy wives all over Norfolk, Virginia. They were a tight group of women, and this was the second murder that occurred when a Navy husband had been deployed. The other woman who had been killed was Susan Woodruff. They found her strangled in her bathtub, and her neighbor perpetrated the crime when he hacked through the shared wall between their 2 apartments. In 1984, serial killers 47-year-old Henry Lee Lucas and 37-year-old Otis Elwood Toole were originally charged with Kathleen Doyle's murder. Lucas was sitting on death row in Texas and confessed to killing Kathleen. He implicated Otis Toole in his confession. Coincidentally, hair and blood analysis from the crime scene matched, which led them to being charged with the murder. But Henry Lee Lucas gave a false confession, so the charges were dropped, and the case went cold for decades. In 2018, genetic genealogy was gaining popularity because of the Golden State Killer case. So Virginia detectives sent DNA from Kathleen's bedspread to Parabon Nanolabs. The DNA matched Dennis Bowman, so the Virginia police worked with the Michigan authorities to arrest the guilty party. Kathy was unaware, but her persistence and her tenacity with which she researched Dennis Bowman played an indirect role in getting Kathleen Doyle's murder solved. The Bowmans were upset and felt Kathy was harassing them. They said she was defaming them on the internet, and they wanted to file a report with police. But investigators were a few steps ahead of the Bowmans, and they offered Dennis a bottle of water. When he left the police station, they took his water bottle, and that was how they got Dennis Bowman's DNA for testing. Dennis Bowman confessed to breaking into Kathleen Doyle's house through the bedroom window when he was drunk, but he said he only planned to rob the place. Bowman claimed he didn't expect anyone to be home. He didn't deny that he assaulted and stabbed the victim, but said she was alive when he left the house. Kathleen Doyle's father wanted nothing more than his daughter's murder to be solved. He was in endless communications with detectives to make sure that they were working on his daughter's case. Kathleen's father wrote this about his daughter. Though her pictures are all around me, on my desk and on the wall, I find it hard to describe Kathleen. My descriptive powers are simply inadequate to portray all her special qualities. His daughter was very important to him, and it was unfortunate he passed away in 2016, so he never saw Dennis Bowman's arrest. On February 9th, 2020, they extradited Bowman to Virginia to face the charges filed against him for the murder of Kathleen Doyle. That same month, Dennis Bowman confessed to hiding the death of his 14-year-old adopted daughter, Aundria Bowman. Dennis Bowman called his wife of 50 years from jail and told her that he was responsible for Aundria's death. He also told her where their daughter was buried on the property. And Brenda was the one who told police where to recover the remains. Kathy Turkanian provided her DNA, and in March 2020, the DNA analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Aundria Bowman. As Kathy had suspected, Aundria had been buried under the cement slab in the Bowman's yard. She felt Dennis Bowman had confessed because he didn't want to sit in a Virginia prison while he waited for his murder trial, and his confession would bring him back home to Michigan. Bowman said Aundria's death was an accident. On March 11, 1989, she packed her bag and intended to run away. Aundria threatened Dennis Bowman that she was going to tell the police how he molested her. He and Aundria got into an argument. Bowman slapped her, which caused her to fall down a steep staircase and break her neck. He needed to cover up the accident, so he took her body out to the barn. Bowman burned her bag and clothes and placed her body under a tarp. He called the police that day and reported Aundria was missing. Later, Bowman went back to the barn and used a machete to dismember his daughter. The machete was not a proper tool for the job, so he switched to an axe. He cut off her legs, stuffed her in a barrel, and buried her on their property. When they moved to Hamilton, Bowman moved her to their new home and buried her under the cement slab. Investigators recovered the machete used in the crime, which was located under Dennis Bowman's bed. He told police he was the only person responsible for her death, and selfishly kept the secret for decades so he can maintain his life with his wife and see his other daughter, Vanessa, grow up. Given Dennis Bowman's history of violence against women, it was fair to assume his confession was highly edited. Kathy believed that he likely planned Aundria's murder, since she was going to report him for sexual assault. In June 2020, Dennis Bowman pleaded guilty to charges of murder and rape of Kathleen Doyle, for which he received a life sentence. He received an additional 20 years for the burglary. Bowman's confession about Aundria's murder worked out as Kathy suspected. Bowman would serve a sentence in Michigan instead of Virginia, while he waited to stand trial for Aundria's murder. In August 2020, they charged Dennis Bowman with 1 count of murder, first-degree child abuse, and mutilation of a dead body. Yet another crime Bowman committed was discovered. In 1979, a 27-year-old woman was tied, gagged, and sexually assaulted by a man who broke into her home. When confronted, Dennis Bowman confessed, since he was already going to serve the rest of his life in prison, and the statute of limitations had been exceeded for this crime. In February 2021, police were finally investigating the abduction of the 6-year-old girl who was hauled into the bushes. They considered Bowman to be a prime suspect. Law enforcement still had the rope that was used in the crime, but the DNA did not match Dennis Bowman. The initial hearing for Dennis Bowman's trial for Aundria Bowman's murder took place in February 2021. When Brenda Bowman was on the stand, she said she only learned the truth about what Dennis did to Aundria after they charged him with Kathleen Doyle's murder. She admitted Aundria had accused Dennis of molesting her, but Brenda told her daughter that it was a lie. The medical examiner ruled Aundria Bowman's cause of death a homicide. The forensic anthropologist stated there was evidence of blunt force trauma. A tool with a sharp edge was likely used in the body's mutilation. He also mentioned Aundria's remains were found in a container that was holding 5 bags of body parts. On December 22, 2021, 72-year-old Dennis Bowman pleaded no contest to second-degree murder of Aundria Bowman. They sentenced him to an additional 35 to 50 years in prison. Dennis Bowman's neighbors in Hamilton described him as weird. One of his female neighbors who lived across the street said he was strange and kept to himself. There was always something about him that gave her pause. Many neighbors recalled that Dennis Bowman made them feel uncomfortable, and there was an intuition that something wasn't right. One resident said, "It's a little crazy. You just never know what happens behind closed doors." Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Beyond Contempt. Please visit BeyondContemptPodcast.com for the links to the sources and music used in this episode. Research, writing, editing, audio production, and sound design were performed by me, Renee. I want to thank patron Jessica C. Thank you for supporting the show. If you like the show, please leave me a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you so much, everyone.